Listen, relationships aren't about finding anyone, they're about finding the one rare connection that unlocks your soul. For people who avoid closeness, who run when things get too deep, there's something powerful you need to understand. They don't avoid because they don't care. They avoid because they've been trained by life to protect themselves. But here's the truth: every avoidant carries a hidden desire, a desire to finally feel safe enough to stay, and that only happens with one rare person. That person is not the loudest, not the one who forces intimacy. It's the one who creates safety without pressure, the one who allows freedom while building trust, the one who doesn't chase but consistently shows up. When that happens, something shifts, the walls start to crack, the heart begins to trust, and slowly a lifelong bond is formed. That bond isn't fragile, it's one of the strongest bonds in human connection. Because once an avoidant gives their heart, it's not halfway, it's for life. Avoidants fear closeness but secretly crave it. On the surface, it looks like they don't want intimacy, like they're uninterested or emotionally cold. But if you look beneath the protective armor, you'll find a different truth. They long for deep connection just as much as anyone else. The difference is that closeness feels dangerous to them. It stirs up old wounds, memories of times when opening up led to rejection, shame, or disappointment. So instead of leaning in, they pull away. Instead of reaching for comfort, they retreat into independence. It's not a lack of desire, it's a learned survival strategy. Imagine a child who once depended on someone emotionally but felt let down, criticized, or abandoned. That child learns, it's not safe to need anyone. If I get too close, I'll get hurt. Over time, this belief becomes part of their wiring. As adults, they crave love, but when it comes close, they panic. They fear losing themselves. They fear being controlled. They fear that the person they open up to will one day leave. So they protect themselves by putting up invisible walls. And yet, the irony is this: behind those walls, their heart beats with the same need for belonging as yours or mine. This is why avoidants often send mixed signals. One moment they're affectionate, the next they're distant. It's not that they don't care, it's that closeness activates their fear. Think of it like someone who's thirsty but afraid of drowning. They want water, but the moment they get too much, they back away gasping for air. This push-pull dynamic confuses their partners, but at its root, it comes from a deep inner conflict between craving love and fearing it. What avoidants crave most is a love that feels safe, a connection where they don't have to choose between intimacy and independence. They want to be close without losing their sense of self. They want someone who doesn't demand constant reassurance, but instead allows space while still being consistent. When they feel that rare balance, their defenses begin to soften. Slowly, trust grows, and they start to let their guard down. But here's the key: avoidants aren't transformed by pressure. If someone pushes them to open up, it backfires. If someone tries to break down their walls too quickly, they run. What allows them to bond is patience, consistency, and the freedom to come closer at their own pace. Deep down, they are waiting for someone who sees their fear but doesn't judge it, who notices their retreat but doesn't punish it, who welcomes their closeness when they offer it without clinging too tightly. The truth is, avoidants may look like they don't need anyone, but the reality is they need connection just as much, perhaps even more. Their craving for love is often buried under layers of self-protection. And when you realize that, you stop seeing them as cold or detached, and you start seeing them as human beings who have learned to survive by guarding their hearts. So when we say avoidants fear closeness but secretly crave it, it's not a contradiction. It's a reflection of their inner battle. They are torn between the desire to be loved and the fear of being hurt. And that's why, when they finally find someone who makes love feel safe, the connection becomes unshakable. Because after a lifetime of running from closeness, finding someone who allows them to stop running is the rarest gift of all. Trust is the key currency when it comes to avoidance. For people who instinctively keep their guard up, trust is not something that flows naturally. It is something earned in drops over time. Unlike those who enter relationships freely and openly, avoidants measure every action, every word, every gesture, trying to determine if the person in front of them is safe. Safety, for them, is not about physical protection, but about emotional reliability. Can they trust you not to shame them when they reveal a weakness? Can they trust you not to abandon them if they show their true self? Can they trust that you mean what you say and that your presence is not temporary? For avoidants, these questions shape every interaction, and until they feel those questions are answered with consistency, their hearts remain locked. Trust is not built with grand declarations or promises that sound good in the moment. It is built with small, consistent behaviors repeated again and again. When an avoidant notices that you respect their boundaries, when they see that you keep your word, when they realize that your actions match your intentions, a small crack appears in their wall. At first it's almost invisible, but over time that crack widens, and what felt impossible, allowing someone close, begins to feel less dangerous. This is why trust is the most valuable currency for them. Without it, love cannot take root. With it, their loyalty can last a lifetime. It's important to understand that trust is more fragile for avoidants than for others. Because they have learned to depend primarily on themselves, depending on someone else feels like a risk that could cost them everything. The moment they sense inconsistency, words that don't align with actions, affection that feels conditional, or love that feels manipulative, their defenses surge back up like a steel barrier. They would rather protect themselves from pain than gamble on a connection that feels uncertain. That's why, for them, even the smallest betrayal of trust cuts deeply. It doesn't just hurt in the moment, it reinforces the belief they've carried their whole lives. See, I was right not to trust anyone. This is why being the rare person who earns their trust requires patience and authenticity. You cannot rush it, you cannot talk your way into it. You must live in a way that consistently proves you are safe. That means respecting their silences, not pushing them to share more than they're ready for, and holding space for them without judgment. It means being present when they test you with distance, not to chase or demand, but to show that your care does not disappear when they step back. Over time, they begin to see that you're not like the others who pressured, controlled, or abandoned them. They start to believe that maybe, just maybe, this connection is different. Once trust is established, something remarkable happens. The same person who once seemed distant, guarded, or uninterested begins to reveal depths of loyalty and devotion that others rarely see. Their bond is no longer tentative, it is powerful, enduring, and unshakable. Because when an avoidant finally decides that someone is safe, they commit with a kind of permanence that is rare in relationships. The very walls that once kept people out become the fortress protecting the bond they've chosen. Trust, then, is not just important for avoidance. It is everything. It is the bridge between their fear and their longing, between their instinct to run and their desire to stay. Without it, they will always retreat into solitude. With it, they will give their heart in a way that lasts for life. And that is why trust is not simply a nice quality in relationships with avoidance. It is the currency that determines whether love will ever have a chance to grow. One rare person breaks the cycle. For someone with avoidant tendencies, relationships often follow a predictable pattern. They feel drawn to someone, enjoy the initial closeness, and then suddenly feel suffocated or unsafe when the intimacy grows deeper. Fear rises, walls come up, and distance replaces connection. This cycle repeats itself in relationship after relationship, leaving both partners confused and hurt. Yet, there is a profound truth. All it takes is one rare person to break that lifelong pattern. This person is not rare because they are extraordinary in appearance or charm, but because they embody qualities that disarm fear and invite trust in ways most people cannot. The rare person is consistent when others are unpredictable. They are patient when others push. They listen without judgment when others criticize or demand. They create a space where the avoidant feels safe to breathe, safe to take small steps forward without being pressured to leap. The rarity lies not in grand gestures, but in the ability to combine strength with gentleness, freedom with loyalty, patience with persistence. It is not an easy balance to strike, which is why so few can truly do it. But for the avoidant, the presence of such a person feels like a shock to the system, an unfamiliar but deeply healing experience. This rare person doesn't try to tear down walls with force. Instead, they sit outside those walls with calmness and consistency until the avoidant realizes it might be safe to open the gate on their own. Where others have taken distance personally, this person understands it as a protective instinct, not a rejection. Where others have tried to force closeness, this person respects autonomy and shows that love can coexist with freedom. Slowly, the avoidant begins to test the waters, sharing a little more of themselves, leaning in a little closer. And when they do, the rare person responds with acceptance rather than criticism, with reassurance rather than fear. The impact of this cannot be overstated. For someone who has lived in a cycle of mistrust and withdrawal, experiencing a relationship where they are not shamed, abandoned, or controlled is life-changing. It rewrites old beliefs about love. Suddenly, love is not something dangerous, but something grounding. Closeness is no longer a threat to independence, but a source of strength. The avoidant learns, through this one rare bond, that it is possible to love deeply without losing themselves. And that realization is powerful enough to break the cycle they've been trapped in for years. What makes the bond with this rare person so enduring is the depth of gratitude and loyalty it awakens. An avoidant who has finally allowed someone past their defenses does not forget the effort, patience, and authenticity it took. They understand, even if they never fully articulate it, how rare and valuable that connection is. And because they know it is rare, they hold on to it tightly. They may not always express their devotion in conventional ways, but their commitment runs deeper than appearances suggest. The cycle that once defined their relationships is not easily broken, but when it is, through the presence of this rare person, the change is lasting. This single bond becomes the exception that proves to them love can be safe, trust can be real, and connection can exist without fear. And once they have experienced that, they will guard it fiercely for life, because they know how rare it truly is. Bonding is slow but unshakable for avoidance. Unlike people who rush into relationships with excitement and emotional openness, avoidants move cautiously, almost hesitantly, when it comes to forming deep connections. To the outside world, it can seem frustrating or even cold, as if they don't care enough to invest. But in reality, their slowness is not a lack of care. It is the careful process of testing, observing, and gradually lowering the defenses they've relied on for most of their lives. They do not give trust lightly, and they certainly do not give their hearts to just anyone. Every step toward closeness is deliberate, thoughtful, and filled with unspoken calculations about safety and risk. This slow pace can be misunderstood by partners who crave quick intimacy. They may want instant vulnerability, instant declarations of love, or constant reassurance. But avoidants cannot move that way, because every layer of intimacy they allow is like unlocking a door they once swore to keep shut forever. It takes time for them to notice patterns, to see whether the other person's actions align with their words, to feel that their independence won't be swallowed by closeness. For them, bonding is not a sudden spark. It is more like a flame that grows steadily with the right care. And once the flame is strong, it cannot be easily extinguished. The unshakable nature of their bond comes from the rarity of their decision to let someone in. When an avoidant finally decides that a person is safe, worthy, and trustworthy enough to cross the walls they've built, that decision is not casual. It is life, faltering. They are not experimenting with connection. They are committing. And because they know how difficult it was to get to that place, they do not take it lightly. Their loyalty, once given, runs deeper than words can express. Even if they don't constantly verbalize their love or show it in overly demonstrative ways, their devotion is powerful and enduring. It's also important to understand that avoidants are not easily swayed by superficial qualities. They are not bonded through charm alone, nor are they drawn in by surface-level attraction. What makes the bond stick is consistency, authenticity, and safety over time. These are the things they value because these are the things they have feared lacking in past connections. Once they find them in someone, they hold on, and when they hold on, they rarely let go. This is why avoidant bonds are described as slow but unshakable. They do not fall in love overnight, nor do they promise forever easily. But when forever is promised, it is not an empty word. It is a deeply considered choice that comes after countless moments of testing, reflecting, and finally surrendering the fear of closeness. In that sense, their love can actually be more enduring than those who attach quickly but detach just as easily. Avoidants may resist at first, but when they stay with a depth of loyalty that is hard to match. For the person who earns that bond, patience becomes the key. If they can withstand the slow pace, if they can appreciate the gradual deepening of connection instead of rushing it, they will be rewarded with a love that is steady, grounded, and lasting. It may not be flashy, and it may not follow the romantic timelines most people expect, but it is strong, and once secured, it is almost impossible to break. For avoidance, love is not about speed, it is about certainty. And when certainty is achieved, the bond they form is one of the most unshakable connections a human being can create. Emotional attunement matters more than words when it comes to avoidance. Many people assume that relationships thrive on constant verbal reassurance, long conversations about feelings, and openly spoken promises. While those things may help in some relationships, they do not hold the same weight for avoidance. Words for them are not always reliable. They may have grown up hearing promises that were broken or affectionate words that were not matched with consistent behavior. Because of this, they learn not to trust words at face value. What penetrates their defenses is not what someone says, but how someone shows up. It is the emotional alignment between action and intention, the subtle signals of safety, and the felt sense of being understood without pressure. Avoidants are highly sensitive to inconsistency. When someone says one thing but does another, it triggers their suspicion. They read between the lines, noticing tone of voice, body language, and energy far more than verbal declarations. That is why emotional attunement, the ability to sense their state, respect their needs, and respond appropriately, is more powerful than any repeated "I love you." When they retreat into silence, an attuned partner doesn't panic or demand explanations. They give space without punishment, and they welcome the avoidant back when they are ready. When the avoidant tests with distance, the attuned person doesn't interpret it as rejection, but as a protective strategy, and responds with steadiness instead of fear. This quiet understanding creates a profound sense of safety. Emotional attunement also means recognizing when closeness is becoming overwhelming and adjusting without resentment. For avoidance, the fear of being engulfed or losing independence can rise suddenly. If their partner notices the signs and responds by easing the pressure, the avoidant begins to relax. They realize they can be close and still keep their freedom. This builds trust faster than any words could. Over time, the avoidant begins to associate connection with calm rather than threat. This is how their walls start to come down, not because someone persuaded them with language, but because someone aligned with their needs at the exact moment it mattered. Another dimension of attunement is patience with vulnerability. Avoidants do not reveal their inner world quickly, and when they do, it is often in small, hesitant doses. An attuned partner recognizes the courage behind even the smallest disclosure and treats it with care. They don't pry for more or dismiss it as insignificant. They hold it gently, showing that the avoidant's inner self is safe with them. This emotional recognition has far more impact than 1,000 comforting sentences, because it proves through action that their heart will not be mishandled. The deeper truth is that emotional attunement creates the very bond avoidants have been craving but fearing. When they feel someone truly gets them without needing to control or pressure them, their nervous system relaxes. Love stops being a battlefield and starts being a refuge. They don't need endless verbal affirmation because the relationship itself becomes the affirmation. They feel it in the way their partner responds, adapts, and stays steady in the face of their defensive patterns. This is why actions and presence often mean more than words for them. In the end, emotional attunement is about creating a resonance where the avoidant no longer feels misunderstood or unsafe. It is about proving, moment by moment, that love can be both accepting and freeing. Words may still be spoken, but they are no longer the main vehicle of connection. Instead, the bond is carried by understanding, patience, and alignment. And once an avoidant experiences that kind of attunement, they know they have found something rare. It is not just love, it is a deep sense of being truly seen and accepted without fear, and that is what allows them to stay. Their forever bond is about freedom within love. For avoidants, one of the deepest fears is that intimacy will come at the cost of independence. They often equate closeness with being controlled, engulfed, or losing their sense of self. This is why so many of them withdraw when relationships start to deepen. The fear of being trapped outweighs the longing for connection. Yet, the rare bond that lasts a lifetime for them is one that allows freedom and love to coexist. It is a relationship where they do not have to sacrifice autonomy to experience closeness, where they are not asked to give up their individuality in order to belong. This kind of love feels different from the start. Instead of being pressured to share every thought or forced into constant emotional availability, the avoidant feels space to breathe. They realize that they can step back when they need to, without punishment or guilt. That freedom is what keeps them from running. When they sense that their independence is respected, their instinct to flee softens. Instead of walls rising up to protect them, trust begins to grow naturally because they no longer feel like their identity is under threat. The irony is that the more freedom they are given, the more willing they become to connect deeply. For an avoidant, love that demands too much feels suffocating, but love that offers room to be themselves feels safe. They begin to lean in more, share more, and open their hearts because they know they will not lose themselves in the process. This is why freedom is not the opposite of intimacy for them. It is the foundation of it. When they feel free, they are able to bond without fear, and once that bond forms, it is incredibly enduring. The forever bond they create is not marked by constant closeness or dramatic displays of affection. It is defined by balance. There are moments of deep connection and moments of distance, and both are accepted as part of the relationship. The partner who understands this does not panic when the avoidant pulls back because they know the bond itself is not in question. That trust allows the avoidant to return more quickly, knowing that love is steady, not conditional. Over time, this rhythm of freedom and connection creates a relationship that is resilient and long-lasting. What makes this bond so unique is that it does not rely on control or dependency. It is not about needing the other person to feel whole, but about choosing to be with them because love feels safe and liberating. For avoidants, this is the rarest and most valuable experience they can have. To love and still feel free, to commit and still feel independent, this is what makes their forever bond possible. And once they experience it, they do not want to let it go. When avoidants finally find that balance of freedom within love, their loyalty becomes unwavering. They may not always express it in traditional ways, but their actions show it. They stay not out of obligation, but out of a deep sense of trust and gratitude. They know they have found what they have spent their lives searching for, a love that doesn't demand they sacrifice who they are, but instead honors it. That kind of love is not only rare, it is unbreakable. For them, it becomes the bond they guard for life, because it gives them both the safety of connection and the space of freedom, a balance they once believed was impossible.